Imagine a blazing summer noon in Orlando, Florida, the city of Disney dreams. A young woman steps out of a construction site with a bright smile, promising to be back in 30 minutes for an afternoon meeting. She drives her white Ford Explorer to a supermarket to buy snacks for her coworkers, pays $8.63 with her credit card, then walks out the door. But she never comes back. The car vanishes without a trace, leaving only a giant question mark in a busy parking lot. No one realizes that behind this disappearance is a brutal crime, and the victim's husband is about to suffer an unimaginable pain for the second time in his life, after his sister was murdered by a serial killer just 7 years earlier. Welcome to the Case Files, where we dig into real-life cases, crimes that once shook America, and the difficult journeys to bring justice to victims. Today, we're going back to the summer of 1997, to Orlando, Florida, a city famous for the colorful, sparkling lights of Disney World. But behind that bright facade, a horrifying tragedy unfolded, shaking the local community and raising a chilling question. Is any of us ever truly safe? In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of the Carla Larson murder, when a mother vanished in broad daylight. The murder of Carla Larson, when a mother disappeared in broad daylight. Part 1. Setting the scene. Orlando and the main characters. Orlando, the city of dreams. In the mid-1990s, Orlando, Florida was not only America's top tourist destination, but also an ideal place for thousands of young families to call home. College Park, one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, sits near downtown Orlando, with classic charm, historic homes, lush golf courses, and streets named after prestigious universities like Princeton, Yale, and Harvard. This was the kind of place where people could walk their dogs in the evening and chat with neighbors on their front porches without feeling afraid. But in the summer of 1997, that peaceful atmosphere would be shattered by a crime no one could have imagined. Carla Jan Larson, a woman full of energy. Carla Jan Larson, 30 years old, was a talented construction engineer working for Centex Rooney on Disney World's Coronado Springs Resort Hotel project. It was a massive project, a hotel complex made up of 30 buildings and a swimming pool the size of 4 football fields. Carla was responsible for designing and overseeing 3 separate work areas at the same time, a workload so intense not everyone could handle it. Cindy Harrison, the project accountant, once recalled her first impression of Carla like this. When she walked into the room, the whole space seemed to light up with her smile. Carla wasn't just gentle, she could be very tough when she needed to be. She was someone everyone could trust and rely on. Carla and her husband, Jim Larson, moved to Orlando when Carla was transferred to the Disney project. Not long after they moved, Carla gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Jessica. Their lives seemed perfect. Stable jobs, a lovely child, and a cozy home in College Park. But behind that happiness, Jim Larson was carrying a terrible pain from his past. The pain of the past, the Larson family's tragedy. 7 years earlier, in August 1990, Jim's sister, Sonia Larson, was murdered in the infamous Gainesville student killings carried out by serial killer Danny Rolling. Danny Rolling, also known as the Gainesville Ripper, killed 5 college students in 4 days, shaking the entire country. Sonia, 18, and her roommate Christina Powell, 17, were the first 2 victims attacked on August 24, 1990, at an apartment in Williamsburg Apartments near the University of Florida campus. What made it even more heartbreaking was that Jim and Carla themselves had helped Sonia move into that apartment just a few days before the tragedy, and Carla had given Sonia a waterbed, the very bed Sonia was sleeping in when she was attacked. Sonia's death left Jim with severe emotional trauma. He once said that when he got the devastating news about his sister, He felt as if something dark and terrible was stalking his family. That pain never really faded. Danny Rolling was later sentenced to death in 1994 and executed in 2006, but nothing could erase the psychological scars burned into Jim Larson's mind. Part 2. The Fateful Day. Tuesday, June 10, 1997. A morning like any other. That morning started like any other. Jim woke up early, had breakfast, then headed to work at a building supply store in East Orlando. Carla fed their daughter, dropped Jessica off at daycare, then drove to the Disney World construction site. Around 8 in the morning, she arrived at the office and began another busy workday. At lunchtime, Carla decided to buy food for a meeting scheduled later that afternoon. She asked a coworker where the nearest store was, then said, "See you later. I'll be right back." Then she walked out of the office door. That was the last time anyone saw Carla alive. 30 minutes. That changed everything. Carla drove her white Ford Explorer to a Publix supermarket on International Drive, just a few minutes' drive from the office. At 12:15 p.m., she used her credit card to pay for a bag of snacks, including cherries, grapes, pita bread, and pretzels, a total of $8.63. The receipt clearly showed the time, 12:12 p.m. But after that, Carla didn't come back to the office as she had promised. The meeting was scheduled for 2:30 in the afternoon. When a client called to ask if Carla had arrived, Cindy Harrison replied that she still hadn't returned. This was very unusual, because Carla was never late. Time ticked by, minute after minute, hour after hour. By nearly 4 p.m., Cindy started to become seriously worried. She called Jim to let him know what was going on. Jim immediately left work and went to the daycare to pick up Jessica and take her home. After putting his daughter to bed, he waited. But Carla didn't come home. By 7 p.m., Jim couldn't take it anymore. He called the police. Part 2. The investigation begins when fear becomes reality. Police arrive at the scene. Orange County Sheriff's Deputy Tom Matus was on patrol when he received the call about a missing woman. In his experience, most missing person calls at the beginning don't involve foul play, so he wasn't overly concerned. However, just 15 minutes after getting the call, he arrived at the Larson home. And right away, he felt something was off. Jim was extremely anxious, almost panicked, with emotions far stronger than what officers usually see from people reporting a missing person. Tom checked around the house, but found nothing unusual. Yet the more they talked, the more Jim's anxiety showed. When Tom asked if he had called his parents or Carla's family, Jim seemed hesitant, as if he didn't want to make those calls. Then suddenly, Jim said something that stunned Tom. "My wife won't be coming back. It's happening again." Tom asked, "What do you mean, happening again?" Jim told the painful story of his sister, Sonia Larson, who had been murdered by Danny Rolling. He said that when he received the terrible news about Sonia, he felt something ominous, like a dark premonition. And now, he had that exact same feeling. A mother with a small child doesn't just disappear for no reason in the middle of the day, Jim said. Tom immediately reported the situation and requested that the Criminal Investigations Unit get involved. Detective John Leonard takes the case. Detective John Leonard, a veteran investigator with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, took over the case. He also recognized that a woman abandoning her small child and vanishing was extremely rare. Every sign pointed to something serious having happened. During questioning, Leonard noticed Jim's unusual behavior. He was far too quick to accept the worst outcome and seemed completely convinced his wife was dead. That made a lot of people suspicious. According to standard procedure, the husband is always the first suspect in missing person cases with unknown causes. But Jim insisted he wasn't worried about being suspected. He just wanted police not to waste time investigating him, but instead focus on finding Carla. After the initial interview, police had no legal reason to hold Jim any longer. They started tracking financial activity and discovered Carla had used her card at 12:15 p.m. at the Publix. Hoping she might keep using it, they checked for more transactions, but there were none. From the moment she left the store, Carla had completely disappeared. A key witness: the white SUV. The next morning, Detective Leonard went to the construction site where Carla worked to gather information from her coworkers. One manager said he saw Carla drive into the Publix parking lot around noon, but several other workers said that about an hour later, around 1 p.m., they saw a vehicle identical to Carla's speeding out of a wooded area between the construction site and the store. The strange thing was, the driver was a man. Witnesses described the man as white, about 30 years old, brown hair, medium build, fairly tan, and not Jim. Police quickly created a composite sketch of the suspect based on those descriptions. Although the sketch didn't look like Jim, the police still did not remove him from their suspect list. They felt he had been too quick to accept that his wife wouldn't be coming back, and that made people uneasy. Information about the vehicle and the suspect sketch was released to the media, along with a call for public assistance. Part 4. The desperate search and the discovery of the body. Verifying Jim Larson's alibi. While volunteers helped law enforcement teams search, police worked to verify Jim's alibi. They confirmed that Jim had been at work that day, arriving early in the morning, leaving for lunch around 11, then returning about an hour later. In that time frame, Jim couldn't have traveled from East Orlando, where he worked, to South Orlando, where Carla went missing. Jim had a clear alibi. Still, police kept an eye on him because of his unusual behavior. 36 hours of non-stop searching. Meanwhile, volunteers searched the wooded area until late in the afternoon. Everyone pitched in, a typical response in tight-knit communities. Everyone wanted to do something helpful. Yet after 2 full days of searching, they still hadn't found Carla. Then, early in the morning on June 12th, after 36 hours of non-stop searching, 2 of Carla's co-workers accidentally discovered something in an area that police had already combed through. They found the body of Carla Larson covered with a bath towel. Her hair, which had been braided, had come loose, with many strands hanging down. In the intense Florida summer heat, her body had decomposed severely. It was a truly horrifying sight. Now the investigators faced the hardest task of all: notifying the family. For Jim Larson, this was the second time in his life he had to receive the news that a loved one had been murdered. The crime scene. The first clues. When Carla's body was found, the entire city of Orlando went into mourning. The community was stunned to learn that a woman going to work in the middle of the day had been abducted right out of a supermarket parking lot. Everyone was shocked and heartbroken, and people began to fear for their own safety. No one had imagined that tragedy could strike so close to home. Police immediately sealed off the scene and began their investigation. Carla's body was naked and covered with a towel. The killer might have removed her clothing to prevent her from escaping or to commit a sexual assault. Most of the jewelry she typically wore was missing, except for her wedding ring. According to her co-workers, Carla wore the same set of jewelry every day. Police determined that the missing pieces included a gold wedding ring with a pear-shaped diamond, a pair of diamond earrings, and a gold necklace. But investigators raised an important question. Was she really killed just for a few pieces of jewelry? Or was there another motive? Autopsy results. A dead end. When the autopsy results came back, any biological evidence that could have helped identify the killer had been destroyed by Florida's summer heat. The report showed only that the cause of death was strangulation. Police suspected Carla had been sexually assaulted, but had no clear physical proof because of the body's condition. The fact that the car had been driven into the woods suggested the killer had intended murder from the start. Investigators knew their most important lead was the white Ford Explorer. Whoever had that car was who they needed to find. They released detailed information about the vehicle through the media, along with a renewed plea for tips from the public. Part 5. The Breakthrough. When the truth begins to emerge. The burned-out car. 2 weeks after Carla's body was discovered, police received word from another department. A similar vehicle had been found burned in Cocoa Beach, about 100 kilometers east of Orlando. When officers arrived, they saw that the SUV had been spray-painted from white to black. Even though it was badly burned, they could still tell it might be Carla's car. A forensic technician examined the vehicle and noticed an important detail. The car had once had a radar detector installed, which Jim had put in for Carla. He said he often drove fast, so he installed radar detectors on all their cars. Even after the fire, the mounting marks were still visible. Investigators began tracking this device. It would become the key to finding the killer. Angel Huggins, the fateful call. After news about the burned SUV spread through the media, especially on the show America's Most Wanted, a woman named Angel Huggins contacted police with a strange and suspicious story. Angel said that she, her husband, John Stephen Huggins, and their children had come to Orlando on vacation. Then her husband disappeared for a while, and when he came back, he suddenly had a white SUV just like Carla's. Angel said she and her husband had gotten into a big fight on the night of June 9th. He wanted to have sex, but she refused. She had to hide in the bathroom, and after John fell asleep, she took the children to the adjoining room to get away from him. The next day, June 10th, John disappeared. When he came back around 2 in the afternoon, he looked exhausted, smelled terrible, and had a bruise on his forehead. Then he told her and the kids to get into the car and leave the hotel, but he didn't go with them. A few days later, John showed up at Angel's mother's house with a white SUV equipped with a radar detector. John said the car was a rental, but Angel was suspicious. When she saw the news about Carla's disappearance and the burned-out SUV, her suspicions grew much stronger, and she decided to call the police. Angel also said that John later handed the SUV over to a friend named Kevin Smith. Tracking the radar detector. Police wanted to find John Huggins, but Angel said he had left with her sister, Tammy, on June 27th and headed to Maryland. They didn't know his exact whereabouts, so investigators decided to track down Kevin Smith first. When they located his house, they were surprised to discover that he lived only about 400 meters from where the SUV had been burned. Kevin denied any involvement, saying that John had simply asked him to hold on to the SUV. Kevin said he became suspicious when he saw the radar detector because rental cars don't come with those. He then claimed he found the device and threw it into the yard because he didn't want to be involved. Police seized the detector and confirmed that it was exactly the same model Jim had installed in his wife's car. This was a crucial piece of evidence. Although Kevin denied wrongdoing, his statement matched the physical evidence, and there were no signs that he had teamed up with Angel to frame John. Investigators found that Kevin had been working at a job site far from where the murder took place, so he was eliminated as a suspect. Angel also couldn't have been the killer, because she had been with her children the entire time. That left only one prime suspect, John Stephen Huggins. The decisive evidence, Carla's jewelry. Later, Angel's mother, Faye, discovered Carla's missing jewelry hidden inside the electrical box at her storage building. This was the decisive physical evidence. Police now had enough to arrest John Stephen Huggins on charges of murder, kidnapping, carjacking, and theft. Part 6. The arrest and trial of John Stephen Huggins. The suspect is taken into custody. On July 28, 1997, John Stephen Huggins was arrested. He denied all the charges, claiming that his ex-wife was framing him. But the evidence spoke for itself. Carla's white Ford Explorer was found spray-painted black and burned in Cocoa Beach. The passport radar detector Jim had installed in his wife's car was recovered from Huggins's friend's house. Carla's jewelry, the gold wedding ring with a pear-shaped diamond, the diamond earrings, the gold necklace, was found in the electrical box at his ex-mother-in-law's property. Angel Huggins's testimony about John's suspicious behavior lined up exactly with the time Carla vanished. The bruise on John's forehead when he returned to the hotel, possibly from Carla fighting back. All of those pieces pointed straight at one man, John Stephen Huggins. The first trial in 1999. The first trial took place in January 1999 in Jacksonville, Florida. The jury didn't believe Huggins's denials. By a vote of 8-4, they recommended the death penalty. On February 3, 1999, Judge Stan Morris formally sentenced John Stephen Huggins to death. But the story didn't end there. Brady violation. A new trial is ordered. After the sentencing, Huggins's attorneys discovered that prosecutors had withheld important evidence during the first trial, violating the Brady rule. Specifically, they had failed to disclose the statement of Preston Osley, a forensic engineer who had seen a blonde woman resembling Angel Huggins driving a white Ford Explorer with a license plate similar to Carla's on June 11, 1997, one day after Carla disappeared. This information could have created reasonable doubt about Angel's role in the case. The court ordered a new trial. However, legal records show that the Florida Supreme Court overturned the original death sentence in 2001 and ordered a retrial, but there is no clear public record detailing how the second trial played out or what its final result was. What is clear is that Huggins remains in the Florida prison system and continues to appeal. Part 7. The impact on the Larson family. A pain that never heals. The Orlando community was eventually somewhat comforted when justice, at least in part, was served. But for Jim Larson and his daughter Jessica, the pain of loss never truly fades. Jim Larson is one of the most grief-stricken men in America. In less than 7 years, he lost the two women he loved most to murder. In 1990, his sister Sonia Larson was killed by Danny Rolling in the Gainesville murders. In 1997, his wife Carla Larson was abducted and murdered by John Huggins. In a 1999 interview with the St. Petersburg Times, Jim said, "I don't know why my family has had to endure so much, but I'm not going to give up. I have to live for Jessica." Jim also shared the moment he knew Carla was the one for him, when their souls seemed to touch in a deep connection he'd never felt with anyone else. He described Carla as the light of his life, and losing her felt like having a piece of his own soul torn away. In a letter read aloud in court, Jim couldn't hold back tears as he recalled memories with Carla, the way she cared for Jessica, and the future they had once dreamed of together. Jessica and life after the tragedy. Jessica was only 2 years old when her mother was killed. She has very few memories of Carla, but through stories told by her father and relatives, she gradually came to understand the incredible mother she had lost. Jim later began dating Brenda Benson, a woman who had also lost her husband the same year Carla died. In a bittersweet detail, young Jessica, in the innocence of childhood, called her dad's new girlfriend Mommy. Jim tried to rebuild a life for his daughter, teaching Jessica about strength, resilience, and not letting past pain define her future. But the shadow of tragedy was always there, a constant reminder of what they had lost. Conclusion and message. Lessons from the case. The murder of Carla Larson was not just an isolated crime that happened on an ordinary summer afternoon in Orlando. It's proof of how fragile our sense of safety really is. It shows that tragedy can strike anyone at any time, even a woman who worked hard, loved her family, and seemed to have no obvious dangers around her. From a disappearance with no clear leads, the case unfolded into a complex chain of events with dozens of theories, multiple suspects, and evidence that at first seemed faint or even useless. Yet from the smallest details, a radar detector, a spray-painted car, jewelry hidden in an electrical box, justice eventually tracked down the killer, John Stephen Huggins. It's a reminder that no crime is perfect, and no killer can run forever if investigators refuse to give up. The role of the community and witnesses. Even though much of the evidence was circumstantial, it was the persistence of the investigation, the cooperation of the community, and the courage of witnesses like Angel Huggins and her mother that made everything clear in the end. Angel Huggins risked her own safety to speak up. She knew that reporting her ex-husband could put her in danger, but she still chose to do the right thing. Because of her, justice was served. The volunteers, Carla's co-workers, neighbors, everyday citizens, spent long days combing through the woods in the brutal Florida heat. They weren't police officers or detectives, but they did everything in their power to help. That is the spirit of a united community, one that refuses to abandon its own in times of crisis. A pain that never truly fades. This case also shows that the pain of losing loved ones to violence never truly goes away. For Jim Larson, who had already lost his sister to murder and then lost his wife in a brutal crime, all that remains are memories and the responsibility of being a father to his young daughter Jessica. Carla left this world at the age of 30, taking with her so many unfulfilled dreams, but her name will not be forgotten. Her story is a reminder that justice may arrive late, but it will always come if people refuse to give up. The crime is over, and the killer has been punished, but the loss remains forever in the hearts of those who loved Carla. From that pain, the Orlando community became more united, more vigilant, and more resilient, determined to prevent another Carla Larson from disappearing in broad daylight. If you see something suspicious, speak up. If you know something that could help an investigation, don't stay silent. Because sometimes a phone call, a statement, or a tiny detail can change everything. This is the Case Files. Thank you for listening. Remember, justice may be delayed, but it will never be denied, if we stand together. Don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and leave us a comment telling us what you think about this case. See you in the next episode. Stay safe, stay curious, and never stop questioning.